when we're in the journey of ignorance, it is easier to make decisions that promote material success, because materiality, the more gross something is, like the more manifest it is, the more separate it is, the more tangible it is, the more material it is, the more egoic it is, the more separate it is. And the more material and egoic we become, the more pain we experience in our consciousness. And the reason that's the case is because if someone is forgetting the truth of what they are, it's a scary place. It's a scary place because on an individual level, when everything's going well and the ego is in the inflated part of its polarity, it feels great. I'm so good. I'm like, even though we're not present fully with the experience, we're more reactive to the experience because we can't have presence when we're dominated in ego consciousness. So we're not getting to really pull the fullness from the experience and extract the juice from the experience. We're still riding a high. It's not in the highs that spiritual awakenings happen, or there is a perceived problem in a scenario. It's in the low that gets magnetized through the high. There is no maintaining the high. That's why when someone does drugs, they have withdrawals. That's why you can't just hold the high. That's why every celebrity, you look at NFL players, 78% of NFL players end up bankrupt. 80%, up to 80% of all elite sports athletes end up divorced because they struggle with mental health. Because what happens is, to be riding the consciousness where you perceive that you're better than, you're separating yourself more and more. And the felt experience of that is one of suffering, especially when the pendulum swings from high to low, which it inevitably does in equal amounts. So someone's riding a high, and I'll use myself as an example here. When I had all these things and I'd risen above and I was leading 25 full-time staff, I was the best. I was the top. I was the leader. When I looked at and in the industry in Australia, and I was the leading person helping life coaches grow their business, I was the best. So as much as I was above everyone and I succeeded, I won at the game that I was playing, I was also put myself in this whole other category where I was separate to everyone else. I wasn't able to connect with people. I wasn't actually better. I just perceived myself as better, and I perceived other people as worse. And so even though I was doing a great job in the game that I was taught to play and told to play, taught by my dad, taught by my primary school sports teams, private school I got a scholarship to, winning is good. There's a scoreboard. And the better you do on that scoreboard academically, like I got a pretty solid enter score. I did well academically. And I felt better than when I did, and I felt worse than when I didn't. If I got a low test score, I felt worse than. Got a high test score, I felt better than. If I had a good performance when I played football, I felt better than. If I had a bad performance, I felt worse than. Okay. So my human experience was conditional on being above average, better than, which is an experience that leads to a feeling of separation. And that's exactly what my experience was like as I thrived more and more. And I ticked the boxes that I was taught to tick by society more and more. When I was at the top of my game, the absolute peak, where I had the most material possessions and the most money coming in, and I was accomplishing the most, was when I felt the most lonely. I felt the most separate, and I didn't understand it. I identified with feeling lonely at the time. I felt very lonely. I felt very frustrated and misunderstood, and I felt like my material world, because I was feeling innately better than and attempting to be better than, that was a felt experience for the people around me. I wasn't present with them and valuing their soul, their uniqueness equally to myself. And that's a felt experience. When people are therefore around me, the energy that I was projecting out was one of, I'm better than you. And so then when people were around me, they felt worse than just by being in my presence. That's it. And you could say some people felt inspired. Sure, I inspired people because they were hoping that I was a ticket in their life to them also being better than. And so I was helping and aiding and supporting people to hit a point of the intolerable pain of separation and have an awakening in their own life. You could argue that, but I wasn't necessarily helping people feel whole and more connected to fulfillment, because I was only in my first phase of my soul experience. I was in the phase of forgetting the truth of what I was. And that's why it felt so painful to be the more materially successful that I became, because it was based in fear, because I didn't innately feel unconditionally lovable for who I am and what I was, because of that ignorance, because of that forgetting of the truth of my presence and what I actually was, because I forgot that, it caused a huge amount of internal pain, because I legitimately was I was becoming more and more separate. I was trying to separate myself more and more without even realizing that was my primary aim. I wanted to become the best of all time at everything. I wanted to be the best speaker of all time, the most successful. I wanted to have a net worth of $10 billion. And I was so driven to be different, to be separate, which is crazy when I look back. Like, why would I want to be separate from people?